Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Sabir, pronouns he, him, and I direct events here at the Strand. Before we launch into a discussion of Rachel Smythe's new book, Lore Olympus, I'd like to share a little bit of history about the Strand. The Strand was founded in 1927 by Benjamin Bass over on 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled from 48 bookstores until, after over 94 years, the Strand is a sole survivor, now run by third-generation owner Nancy Bass Wyden. We want to thank all of you for your support. Without our loyal community of book lovers, the time of authors like Rachel and Jennifer, we wouldn't be here today. And we are so truly appreciative of all of you. Tonight, we are thrilled to have with us Rachel Smythe for the launch of their new book, Lore Olympus, Volume 1. Rachel Smythe is the creator of the Eisner-nominated Lore Olympus, published via Webtoon. Joining Rachel in conversation tonight is Jennifer L. Armentrout. Jennifer lives in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. When she's not hard at work writing, she spends her time reading, watching really bad zombie movies, pretending to write, hanging out with her husband, her border jack Apollo, border collie Artemis, 6 judgmental alpacas, 2 rude goats, and 5 fluffy sheep. In early 2015, Jennifer was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, a group of rare genetic disorders that involve a breakdown and death of cells in the retina, eventually resulting in a loss of vision, among other complications. Due to this diagnosis, educating people on the varying degrees of blindness has become a passion of hers, right alongside writing, which she plans to do as long as she can. And so, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Rachel and Jennifer to the stage.
Hi. We guys were good? Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and spending some time with us. I wanted to start off by saying, I was telling Rachel this earlier. I had gotten an email about doing this event with Rachel a little bit ago, and also to see if I wanted to blurb this amazing little thing called Lore Olympus. And I have never in my life responded to an email quicker ever. I have been reading the webtoon since, I want to say you started posting in 2018, right? Roughly?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it was 2019. I fast passed, I don't know how many things. Like, yes, 5 coins, give it to me. So it's a huge honor, and thank you so much for being here and spending this time with me.
Well, it's a pleasure, and it's so great to be able to do this event with you. I love your books as well. I started reading them immediately as soon as I knew we were doing this panel together, and I just read them back to back, day after day after day, and I was like, oh my god, it's so good. I couldn't put it down. So I was like, oh my god. I almost was like, I don't know if I could do a panel with her anymore, because I'll just be starstruck the whole time. And I'll be just looking. Oh my goodness.
I think it's so amazing, when you stumble across a new favorite, you don't ever think that you're going to speak with them, you're going to actually interact with them. And I always find that such an amazing experience when you're like, wow, I'm actually getting to talk and meet someone who's your I mean, do you call them comics or graphic novels? What is the official term? Because I feel like it's a little bit different than normal, graphic novels, since it came from online. Or is it the same?
I kind of use the terminology sort of interchangeably. Most of the time I'll call it a webtoon, just because of the vertical scrolling and stuff like that, the format. But in general, if I'm just out and about and talking to people, I'll probably just refer to it as a comic. Yeah.
It was one of the first ones. I think my earliest comics that I read was The Walking Dead, but I had never gotten into looking at them online. And then someone in one of my reader groups had brought it up, and I was like, let me see what this is. And I just got super ridiculously obsessed. I was on the Patreon of yours for a while. I will say I looked forward to the certain updates that were not necessarily safe work, maybe. So yeah, I was definitely on that for a while. But you are amazingly and talented. And so what I thought I was going to get started with is asking you just a couple of random questions that really don't have much to do with writing, because I feel like everyone who is here is probably just, would love to get to know you a little bit better. These are pretty, I think, easy questions for you. So the first one is, what is your favorite drink and or food?
I feel like I'm a huge fan of just like really sugary drinks. Like I try to avoid them, but like once I get them, I'm like, I can't stop. They're so good. Especially like there's like an Italian one called limonada, and it's like very sour and very sweet. And I'm like, yes, this is it. Like again and again and again. Yes. It's mainly soda at the moment.
Same. I'm a huge Coca-Cola girl. I just discovered pink lemonade for the first time this year.
Oh my gosh, what is that?
This is going to sound really sad. I drank the first one from McDonald's. Someone brought it to the house for me. It is basically, I think they make it different ways. It's lemonade with either strawberry or raspberry. And it's the perfect mixture of sweet and sour. So if you stumble across pink lemonade, I think you'll like it.
Okay, I'll go for it.
Where is one place in the world you would like to visit or return to? Like your dream place that you haven't gone to or you would love to go back to?
Oh my gosh, I think probably like any travel would be good right now. But I think this sounds like the most basic answer ever, but I'd really like to go to Greece, just because, there's so much to look at there. And I haven't been there before, and I think it would be like amazing to go see like the culture that's there. I think like, especially because I'm from New Zealand, which is a relatively like, it's kind of like a newish country, which is like hard to explain. But if you go to somewhere like overseas, a lot of the time you're going to see like layers and layers and layers of history, and you're like, oh my gosh, these people have been living here for so long. So it'd just be really exciting to go to a place which like has like that very extremely layered history to have a look. Yeah.
I am the same way. From a country that is relatively, young comparatively. The first time I was in Europe, I kept touching the buildings because I was like, we don't have buildings that have stood for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And I'm the same way. I think I may have flew past Greece once, maybe, onto an event. So it's kind of like, is that Greece down there? I would love, oh my gosh, just to see some of the Colosseums, the pillars. I mean, that would just be amazing. I got to go to Rome and do an event, and I feel like, it has a lot of the same just ancient history of where you see the Colosseum, the pantheon. It's just it's just kind of shocking to see it in person. But also, yeah, it'd be nice just to go anywhere right now too. Yeah. So what is your favorite type of movie? Do you like comedy, romance, horror, drama, action?
I mainly like horror. I think most of my favorite movies are kind of like psychological thrillers, or horrors are kind of like in that category. Like I really like I want to say Midsummer, but I feel like I'm mispronouncing it. But the one with all the flowers and stuff like that, and it's like really well. It's like either that or Midsummer, and it's like that group of tourists that go to that it's like a village in like Europe, and they take psychedelic drugs or something like that. Yeah. Just like visually, it's really interesting. And also as a horror movie, this is like an odd thing to say, but it's very well lit. Like a lot of horror movies are at night, and you're like, what's happening? Why is there so much shaky cam? What's happening? Why can't it be in broad daylight? That would be nice. But yes, no, I'm a big time horror fan. I think like originally I wanted to make like horror comics, but I'm actually not very good at making horror comics. I'm like way better at making romance ones, which is very funny.
I know what you're saying about the horror movies. It's like, I think it's like bright lighting. It's, to me, it's scarier because it's more realistic. Because with the darker vibes, sometimes I'm like, well, I wouldn't have went into that house. Like if it looked like that at night, like, you know, I would.
Yeah, I'm like, I wouldn't go.
Yeah. No, thank you. I'm out on this one.
I'll just stay here.
I'm the same way. I'm the same way. I write romance. It's very hard to get me to watch a romance movie. I can't do it. But I love horror. I love horror with a little bit of comedy, like Cabin in the Woods. Yeah, and things like that, where it's like you're laughing at the same time.
I think horror comedy is like a really like underrated genre. Like there needs to be more horror comedies. Like bring them back. We want more.
Yeah, and I think there's another one I really like is, and I'm probably going to say it wrong. Is it like Tucker and Dale Must Die? It's basically, I think it's Tucker and Dale Must Die, but they have it is kind of making fun of, because I live in West Virginia, and it's kind of making fun of that genre of wrong turn when you go out to the woods and there's all these hillbillies around, but they really have like hearts of gold, and they keep getting misunderstood every time they run into these college kids. If you haven't watched it, it is hilarious. It is one of the funniest movies. But it's definitely gory, but it's pretty good.
I'll make sure to check it out.
Yeah, that and Cabin in the Woods is up there for me. So what is a favorite book of yours, old or new? It can be any book.
Oh my gosh, that's such a hard question because I like a lot of books. I think, goodness, I really like The Odyssey, which I know is such like a basic answer to give, but there was a translation of it that came out a couple of years ago that was done by a woman, and it like really changed how like various like how it was translated in areas, and I was like, oh man, it's such like, I mean, obviously it's very violent in some portions, but in general it's like such a beautiful book, and you're like, and plus I love Penelope so much, and I'm like, oh gosh, I really love The Odyssey. And the other book is, let's see, I really like this one, which is based on a real life account. I think it's called Fake, and it's about a woman who starts dating this man who's basically like fabricated his whole life, and like he just has lied about everything, and basically she writes her account of this, and then how because she was a journalist as well, and she wrote like I guess like a report or an essay about it, and then she wrote about people's reactions to it, being like, how could you be so stupid, blah 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 blah. And I just found it was like a fascinating book. Like, yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. Yeah,
I do like those books that really kind of messes with your head a little bit, like where you just, it's, you know, some of the movies that are like that, where you kind of book or movie, you get to the end of it and you're just like, okay, well, now I don't know what to do with myself.
Yeah, it kind of sticks with you for a couple of weeks, and you're like, oh my god, yeah.
Yeah, for me there was oh my gosh, now I'm gonna have to think about this later. There was a book like that, but you know, when you said Odyssey, like one of the books that has stuck with me for a long time, and it was a book I had to read for history in college, is All Quiet on the Western Front. We had to read it for world history class, and I had procrastinated, but once I finally got into that book, I just got hooked. It's not something I would ever read for choice, but it's one of those books when you get to the end, you're just like, oh God, it just sticks with you. And you know, and I don't want to spoil how it ends, but it's like one of those where you just want to throw something. But sometimes those classics, I think, can get you. So here's my weird question for you. When I typed this up, I was like, Jen, are you really going to ask this? If you could only meet one of these and walk away with proof that they exist, would it be ghosts or aliens?
I'm gonna say aliens because I'm going for the Pulitzer. I'm like, you got to get that. You got to get those scientists. I think if you could be like, I I found life out there and I have the proof. I have the receipts. They'd be like, yes, here's your Pulitzer, mademoiselle. I don't know if they give Pulitzers for that, but I'm just going to assume they do.
They should.
I'm waiting. It should be in the mail.
You that's a much more clever answer than me, because I would have went with ghosts. And then but then I'm like, how do you have proof of ghosts existing? And I didn't think that one through, but that's a good one, aliens. So what do you like to do in your downtime?
I'm gonna say read. Which we could probably already glean that from previous conversation. I like to read, I like to watch movies, and I also just like to play games and also sleep and also eat, which is not that interesting, but you know, food can be like a whole thing if you want it to be.
I have a feeling you're like me and you really don't have a lot of downtime. So I feel like eating and sleeping. I feel seen. Eating and sleeping are things I like to do in I'm finally not working. One of the things that I have gotten into is I love watching reaction videos to like TV shows or movies on YouTube. There's just something so pure about like watching these people get so excited. I have watched them over and over again. I love watching reaction videos to Game of Thrones and the Avengers Endgame and Infinity War. I watch them over and over again. It makes me happy.
I think I'll go through stages of things because I need to like, when I'm working or drawing or what have you, I need to like have something going on, like background noise. So there always needs to be something playing. And I'll go through like a lot of skincare videos, but mainly like, there's one where they like take the ones from like, I think it's Vogue that does them, but don't quote me on that. But they'll get celebrities and the celebrities will do like their skincare routines. And then other people will comment on the skincare routines and be like, this is a terrible skin routine. You should not rub your face in sugar. And I do enjoy that.
Yes. Yeah, I watched a couple of them on Facebook, and I can't think of his name because I want to say he may be from New Zealand.
Oh, is it Simon Welsh? Is that his name? I think he's British.
British.
Yeah,
I don't. Yeah, I'm trying to think of it, but he does that a lot. I've seen him where he'll look at the hottest trend and then break it down and be like, "Don't do this to yourself." And yeah, I like to watch those too. Brad Mondo, the hair stylist. And then you watch those videos and you're just like, oh God, people like.
I love a roast. Love a roast.
So, okay. The last of general questions. If you were a part of the Greek pantheon, who would you be if you would choose to be any of them?
Okay, so I'm pretty sure that there is a goddess of laziness. Like I know there is. I can't remember her name, but I'm like, her. That would be it. I'd do that. Like I'd be one of those like additions to the pantheon where like there's not too much pressure and you're probably not gonna like offend anybody. So yeah, I think that's what I would go for.
I'm trying to think of the god, and I cannot think of his name right now. Who's like the god of beer, or liquor celebrations?
Dionysus.
Dionysus, yes. Why could I think? I feel like a god of laziness would fall underneath Dionysus. Like you would be like that group of. I'm actually, applaud you. I would be afraid enough to be in the Greek world. They are, look at one of them the wrong way and you get turned into a holly bush or something. I don't. You're very brave.
They're very go big or go home for sure.
Right. So I thought it'd be great if you could tell everyone a little bit of your process, because that has always been interesting to me. Like, do you start with the illustration first, or is it the dialogue that kind of drives what you're illustrating, or vice versa?
So it's pretty like I'll start off with like a for the general like story, like, you know, ongoing chapters, I'll kind of do like bullet points just to make it really easy, and then maybe some like nested bullet points. And then when I go to make the chapter, I will write it. So I write probably like 400 to 500 words, and I'm like, I feel like this is roughly going to fit in 70 to 60 panels. I'm like, it's going to balance out. That's the recipe I've found works for me. And then I will start, like, I know some people do like thumbnails, which are kind of like really brief, sketchy drawings, but like I don't really do that because I feel like I spend just as much time on the thumbnails as I do on the actual like draft. So I'm like, yeah, and like the dialogue and text kind of works as a thumbnail. And then I go in and start laying it out, and I will definitely like work on the script still when I'm laying it out with the drawings, because quite often you'll do a drawing and you'll be like, this looks funny, and it will kind of inspire you to like elevate the dialogue a little bit more, or like do a joke that you didn't think of before because you see how funny the characters look, and you're like, oh yeah, no, I could definitely, you know, add in a couple of extra panels to execute this joke, or to, you know, sprinkle some sugar on top, what have you. Yeah, so that's generally how I go about it. Occasionally, if it's like an action-based scene, because I'm not like that great at action, I will actually draw it first, because I'm like, I don't know how to write out action. Like it feels very strange to be like, such and such punches such and such in the face, because I don't have like the skills to write that. You know what I mean? Like, I just write the you know, the dialogue and nothing much in between. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I do action scenes, you have to get so creative with describing the body. Like, what are they doing? Because you know, as you know, it's like you can't really be repetitive with words, but after a while, there's only so many ways to describe kicking somebody in the face, right? So it's like,
I know what you mean.
Face.
Like, definitely, I can feel like, because I'm working on chapter 184 at the moment, and there's like literally only so many ways you can like draw somebody, and you kind of get to this point, like, because I feel like at the start of the comic I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be so innovative, and now I'm like, I don't know, like, I've done everything I can think of. I promise I'll think of more stuff, but just, you know what I mean, you just have to like find a new way of like elevating the work that everyone's already seen. Yeah,
there's a lot, I feel like, with, and it's interesting to me to hear that from, you know, for someone who only writes, cannot draw to save her life whatsoever, to hear that you kind of have the same thing with drawing, which is, how do I show this scene differently than I've showed it before? Because like I said, with action scenes or like love scenes, it's like it becomes like, well, again, there's only so many ways, you know, that you can do that it communicates clearly. And so I find that very interesting with that. Do you like, so have you ever like gotten like a form of writer's block where maybe you had a dialogue but couldn't draw to it, or vice versa?
Absolutely, like all the time. Like, I get writer's block, I get like art block, I get all the blocks. Any blocks there is to have, I will get it. Like, I think probably the hardest thing, the writing is okay. Like, if I get stuck on the writing, a lot of the times I'm like I said before, you can draw, and the drawings will kind of like help you get a better idea of what you want them to say. But there can be times when I'm drawing and I'm like, I have no idea how to make this interesting or like, you know, entertaining for people. Because obviously, like with a webtoon, it's like you need to make the story in a webtoon make sense as a whole. Like, if someone were coming in today and reading like from chapter 1 to chapter like 180, like, it should make sense as a whole, but it also needs to be really like, it needs to have a hook from week to week. Like, it needs to be, you know, entertaining for people who are like coming in and reading it every week, which is very difficult. And I always use this approach where I'm like, I try to be like, what new thing are you telling people this week? it's like you need to tell them a new thing somehow. Like, but as you know, like as you work your way into a story, sometimes you do have to revisit things, and you have to, you know, like it's not repeating yourself, but you need to take that information and relay it in a new way where people are like, there's new information within this old information. Thank you. But it's very difficult.
Yeah, it can be difficult with just writing and going back, like, especially if you're foreshadowing something chapters ago or episodes ago or books ago, and then you have to kind of remind the reader that this was foreshadowed, but do it in a way, like you said, where it's you're showing it in a new or fresh way, that you're just not like, hello, info dump.
Yes.
Or you know, like something like that. It's one of the things that I find interesting is when you talk about, like, sometimes you'll draw something and it's kind of a funny sketch and it leads to this. I kind of find that too with side conversations with the characters. You know, to me, they're like never anything planned. They just happen as I'm writing. And I'm sure for you, probably too, is you end up finding that becomes a reader's almost favorite thing, is these unplanned sidebars of just randomness that you didn't put really, I don't want to say much thought into it, but it wasn't a part of this thing that was outlined. It was just something that happened, and that they become almost like the favorite thing sometimes people go back to.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel like that's the case, especially for like particular side characters and things that you don't use that often, and people will be like, oh my god, they're my most favorite character ever, even though they've only been in this thing for like 2 seconds. But I think sometimes, you know, what you don't show people is more exciting. I mean, not all the time, but sometimes, like, you know, the reader's imagination of what they can come up with outside of what you've suggested to them, they can just come up with something so much better than, you know, you could ever write. Not to be disparaging or anything, but you know what I mean.
I say the same thing. I'm in my one reader group, like their theories, I'm like, damn, here, write my book. That's better than anything I was going to come up with. So no, I'm always amazed by, but you're right. I think it always makes me laugh when it's like a character who's like referenced once, but I do the same thing where I see a character and I think you're 100% right, that it's our imagination then just develops this whole backstory, this everything to this character that you were kind of like, who again?
Yes.
That person? I don't know what they're doing. That's happened to me quite a bit. So my next question is, like, there is many things that I love about Lore Olympus. One of the things that I felt stuck out so much to me was, it's kind of there's 2 parts to it. One of them is, and oh my gosh, I hope I'm not saying Persephone's name wrong. I mispronounce like everything. But like in most retellings, you don't know anything about Persephone or even the myth, right? Like she's kind of sidelined a bit, where it's like, well, it's all about Hades, and I always say her name too wrong. I always say Demeter, and it's not like Demeter Jen. I'm like, wrong. But so is that what kind of drew you a little bit to really giving her this like amazing backstory, like these goals that are unrelated to what we would have known from the original myth?
I think like what is so intriguing about the original like myth of Hades and Persephone is that there is so much you can like there's a lot of like we were saying before, like what isn't written there is, you know, what you can imagine from what is not written is so good. There's so much there. As like a source material, you can look at it so many different ways. Like, because like you said, Persephone doesn't actually feature in like a lot of the myths about her, which is kind of strange. So like if we're talking like, I'm just going to talk about the Homeric hymn, which is what most people are referring to. But like in that, the majority of that story is told from like Demeter's perspective, and it's more, it's almost like a myth about like bureaucracy, almost. And it's kind of fantastic in the sense that, you know, in those times, if your daughter was to get married, you would never see her again, like, unless you were neighbors. Like, a lot of people like kind of take for granted, like they think, oh, you know, my child's getting married, I'll definitely be able to contact them. But in the ancient world, this is probably not the case. So she's gone, you know, like she's essentially dead in the story. And Demeter's like, oh no, kind of thing. And it's like almost this wishful thinking story about this mother who's like, I'm going against like all of the rules that are laid out, and I am going to get like some of my daughter back, which is really interesting. But yeah, there's a lot with like Persephone there to be looked at, where it's like, I mean, there's no bit in the hymns that is like, this is what Persephone's do, is like, this is what she's doing, no. So it's very much like the power of suggestion, and you know, that I think it's worth looking into and revisiting. Yeah.
Definitely, because as you said, like we don't really, you don't hear much about her. It's like, yep, you're married off. Best of luck to you, and hope it works out. And
Yeah.
on that same line is another thing that really kind of, for me, sets us apart is Hades. He is nothing like what I feel like he's always been represented previously. He's typically represented as this massive alpha character. You know, he sometimes is alpha, and sometimes he's what I call an alpha hole, which is, you know, not the greatest of them. There's alphas and then there's alpha holes, and there is a difference. But like he is, you know, I love what, you know, you've done with him, especially because, as you said, depending on how you interpret the retellings, he can be a divisive figure, depending on how it's being written, how, you know, they came together. So what gave you the idea to shape him like you did?
I think like, I think how it kind of came about is like, I've always really liked this myth, like since childhood. So I feel like that's something that has kind of been like apparent in my brain to me since childhood, and where I'm just like, I know how to do this. I know how to write it. I'll do it. Here you go, everyone. I think probably, like, obviously I've read like quite a few you know, growing up, like kind of retellings and stuff, and you know, there is like a lot where I think for the most part, I think people kind of like look at him as like perhaps like an equivalent to Satan, which he's not, kind of thing. And so like he always ends up being kind of like, you know, terrible. And I'm not to disparage like other people's approaches, because I'm like, that's fine and they can do what they like. But I, you know, I was like, what can I bring to the table? This is what I can bring to the table that might be a bit different. And I think like, I feel like as a whole, like the pantheon, like they've all got like a massive, like they've got their own rap sheets where they've all done some, like, I guess it's so what's compelling about like this particular pantheon is they're not like you know, all good. Like they all have, you know, moments where they're not so good. And I feel like that's fairly like equal throughout them. So I'm like, why does he always have to like be the front? Like, you know, everything he's done which has been bad has been kind of put out there. I'm like, what about everyone else though? What about everyone else? So yeah, that was kind of the approach I took. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it just really stands out, because I think, you know, a lot of times too, when you see retellings, you know, he is, I think a lot of people do nail, I want to say like his sadness, because he, you know, but I feel like in your version, you know, it's almost like, I feel like it's relatable, because it's, you know, I think we all at some point have, you know, like a generalized, you know, we're depressed or we're anxious. We really don't have, we either don't have a reason or we have 500 reasons that ends up feeling like we have none because we have so many. But I feel like in his character, I kind of related to that, where, you know, he's he's kind of, I don't want to use, but I guess in a way almost trapped by the responsibilities of what's expected from him and what's thought of him. And
yeah, I think like there's a lot of room in interpretation for seeing it that way, because you kind of look at it and like, again, like for me personally in doing this interpretation, I kind of looked at like, you know, like these are the things that have happened to these characters, you know, in literature throughout the timeline. And I'm like, how would this translate to like a modern setting? How would they feel about it? You know, what would happen there? So I think there's a lot to be used there in terms of content. Yeah.
yeah. So who is your favorite character to work with? Or favorite couple characters, if you can't pick one? Because I can never, every time someone asks me that, I'm like, I love and hate all of them equally. So depends on the day. But who is your favorite to really work with?
I think like it really depends on the conditions and what I'm writing. Hades and Persephone obviously are quite easy to work with. I think I have somewhat of a short attention span, so if I have to draw the same characters for like X amount of chapters, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just, you know, it's that whole good screen, bad screen thing where I'm like, I wish I could hurry up and finish this drawing so I could draw something else which is in the exact same format and the exact same screen. So new. I definitely, yeah, like I kind of try and think of some scenes as kind of like mental palette cleansers. So I'll be like, oh, I'll just do this little bit of this character over here, and it will like trick my brain into thinking that something different is happening when it's not really different. But I think, yeah, Hades and Persephone are probably the easiest to write. I think in terms of like, if there needs to be some sort of comic relief, Ares is quite easy to work with. I'm like, and people are generally like, readers are always happy to see him. They're like, yay. So, and the same with Hermes. Those are generally like, people are like, yes, I'm happy to see them. I'm glad that you wrote them in this week. Thank you very much. So, you know, it's a win-win for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, I am always happy when I see Hermes. I love his expression. I feel like his expressions are like when I'm reading something, like I'm when I'm reading the Webtoon, his expressions are mirroring mine. So I feel like, yeah, I love doing that. His expressions. I do the same thing with you know, with kind of, sometimes you do get a little bit bored. I have like ADD for real, so I totally understand that, where it's like sometimes repetition's great, sometimes it isn't the not, and I'll do that. Like I'll jump ahead and write a different scene, and it tricks your brain, because it's like, ooh, new shiny object that's really the same thing, but you know, your brain kind of like, oh yeah. So this is one that I don't know. I was kind of like, I feel like a lot of the readers are probably going to hate me. And let me preface this by saying, I'm not saying I want to be friends with her, but I sometimes feel bad, and I'm going to probably yet again say the name wrong because I have a American education and we're not that great on pronouncing things. Is it Myth? The river nymph?
You can say, I say Minthy.
Minthy. Okay. Gonna say it again. I don't want to be friends with her. However, I feel bad for her sometimes. And I think she is, you know, I know a lot of people hate, you know, I don't want to say hate her, but you know, readers, they love their core couple together, right? They want to see Hades and Persephone, but I think it's amazing. She's not your standard villain, right? She's not like your throwaway, oh, there's the evil girl that everybody has to hate. I feel is very three-dimensional, where I mean, for me personally, I feel bad for her sometimes. Like I really, like, you know, it's weird when it's a character you don't like, or you're not supposed to, but you end up. How did you go about developing her? I feel like I word vomited all over you.
It's all right. I'm probably gonna word vomit right back. I think like in writing like an antagonist, I try and lead more towards like the concept of like this is going to sound very wanky, so forgive me. Like I try and lean away from the concept of like a villain, because the thing is like, you know, there are people in life who, you know, their actions are not great. And you're like, but they still have like mothers and fathers and, you know, friends, family who like, regardless of whether they have been, you know, their actions have been good or bad, like still, you know, love them. There's still a person out there. And I think in general, like when you write a character, even if like they're a good character or a bad character, you want them to have like, you know, you want them to participate in like good and bad actions. So you can be like, I feel like conflicted because they've done this thing that is bad, but you know, they've also done these other things which are a positive. Like I think like a lot of people are like, I don't like Zeus, but there was like that one episode where he like comforted Hera, and like there are episodes where Zeus is charming, but there are also episodes where like Zeus is, you know, very bad. So it's like it's good to have within when you're creating a character that sort of texture, if you will, just so you don't feel like I fully hate this character and that's the only emotion that I'm going to feel towards them. And then, of course, if you do feel like that way too, that's fine. Yeah.
Well, and I think, you know, what is that saying where, you know, everybody is the hero in their own story, right? So, you know, even the villain thing, you know, they're the hero in their own story. And I just found it, I mean, it's again, I have many favorite parts, but I in awe of that ability to make, because, you know, that's one of the hardest things I find is making the who's supposed, and it may not be the ultimate bad guy, or you may have multiple not that great people. They're not bad, they're just not great people. Like I said, you probably wouldn't want to be friends with Zeus, right? You'd be, you know, probably backing away from that friendship. But it's, you know, it can be, well, I feel like in Greek myth, it's like Zeus and Hera. I'm like, I wouldn't want to be around. I don't want that fallout in my life. Like between
just
those
watch
two.
it from Instagram, it's fine. That's what
Right?
I would
Be like, oh, what are they doing
today? Yeah.
But I feel like with her character, it's like one of the prime characters of like where people, you know, like you said, they have mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, friends, whatever. But it's also like there are so many different facets of who they are, and you know, doesn't mean you have to accept or agree with their behavior, but learning or understanding that history and trauma guides a lot of people's behavior. And I just always found her character to be very interesting to me, because, you know, typically it's like you always want to hate that character, but I always kind of like, what is she up to? So another question for you is there another myth you'd like to dive into? And it can be Greek, Roman, Norse, any type of other myth that you liked growing up.
I think like I would probably do the Odyssey, but probably more focused on like Penelope, because like I said before, I like find her to be a compelling character. I find that story to be incredibly compelling. So I think that is what I would look at doing. Like the rest of the stories, I'm like, I don't know if I necessarily, because I've included like some of them within Lore Olympus. So I'm like, I don't know how much I could bring to the table with that. But I do think if someone was like, can you work on this? I'd be like, yes, I can work on this. I could do something. Like, even if you were like, even if I finished Lore Olympus and people were like, can you please write some more about Hades and Persephone in a completely different story? I'd be like, that's fine. I can do that. Don't worry. I've got it. It's fine. I'll just write about them forever.
I feel like with them, you could. I mean, you know, I feel like the world is your oyster in a way with them, because you know, we only know myth-wise up to a certain point about them, and it leaves the whole world open to explore. I mean, I would love to see their daily life, their kids, because I do believe they have in the myth they have 1 or 2 children.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of like hard to research. I think most of them, like, this is very debatable because it's very hard to find like really good source material. Like I've read somewhere that even like what do you call them? The Aneries or
Yes, Furies. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like Hades' daughters sometimes. So it's like it's difficult. But I'm like, I mean, yeah, no, that could be interesting.
Hi, sorry to interrupt. I figure we have about 15 minutes left, so it would be good to dive into some audience questions.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. So our first question is from Alina, who asks, is a Lore Olympus animated series still in the works?
Yes. Yes, it is. I don't have, unfortunately, a huge amount that I can publicly say about it, but I am very excited about the future and it's going to be great. That's what I can say. It's kind of like never ending, it takes a while to make a TV show, but it's kind of exciting because it's like nonstop Christmas where you're like, I don't know when an exciting thing is going to happen, but I know it is. So it's been good. So I can't wait to have information to share. It is still happening.
All right. Our next question is from an anonymous attendee who asks, what are your favorite graphic novels, or more specifically, which ones are essential reading material for professionals in the field? And Jennifer, I'd be interested to hear your answers to that too. What are your favorite graphic novels as well?
I really like, this is like kind of a boring answer because everyone likes the Sandman, but I very much like the Sandman. And it's because like I grew up with it and it just, within like the pages and the style that it's done, there's like lots of different artistic treatment. And I think when I first saw that, I think I was like in probably, I'm going to say intermediate, but you would probably also middle school. I remember looking at it and being like, oh, so a comic can look lots of different ways. Like it doesn't actually have to look like a set way the whole time. So I was like, oh, if you could imagine me as an 11-year-old being like, oh, it's so innovative, oh, fabulous. But probably I didn't talk like that. I really like Barn. I remember reading Barn. So I can't remember what I like about it, but it stuck with me. And every time I see a picture of it, I'm like, oh, Barn, it's so good. Gosh, what else? I read a lot of manga. I really liked Peach Girl. I tried to revisit Peach Girl like a little later, and I was like, I'm so aggravated from Peach Girl, not because it's written badly, but just because of one of the characters, and you'll know what I mean if you've read Peach Girl. Yes. I saw someone say like, shame, yes, no. I'm like, shame, I'll take it to the grave.
For me, when I go back to, I feel like I'm old, so I can remember, I think they revamped the Archie comics at one point. They revamped them several times. That's dating myself there. Also, when I was younger, I was really big into only the X-Men comics because I wanted to be Jubilee really badly. I don't know why. She just shot little sparks on her fingers, but apparently that was my thing. So, but as I grew older, it was probably I got back into it with The Walking Dead right before the show came out. And then in terms of any required for the field, that would definitely be a Rachel question. I can't even draw a stick figure for it. I can give you a manual on what not to do.
I think like in terms of like for the field, I think whatever inspires you to like make anything is good. Like that's what you should be looking at, where if you're reading something and you're like, yeah, I want to make something just like this, I'm so pumped, I'm like, that's what you should go for.
Next question is from Alina, who asks, one of my favorite things of Lore Olympus is the fashion. Where do you get all of the fashion inspo?
I think, so when I was younger, I used to do competitive figure skating, and that involves like, designing a lot of leotards for yourself and being like, these are my leotards I'm going to compete in. And I think that's just kind of carried over. So, I'll just be walking around and think, oh, that'll look nice with this. So it's kind of one of those things, like I said before, like I get blocked for everything, but probably not the fashion. I'm always like, the fashion is the easy part. I just know in my spirit what to do. But I think for the most part at this stage, I try to go for like really classic kind of shapes and silhouettes, just because I feel like, I mean, obviously there is going to be elements of this comic which will age. I have been working on it for over 5 years, so some of the things that are in the beginning of the comic are probably going to age like milk, but it's still, it is what it is. So like at this point in time, I'm like trying like keep the clothes like more historical, or just even just like classic looks where you can't really pinpoint it to like any time, so it future proofs the comic just a little bit more, just a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I'm stealing the phrase "age like milk," and then look, our
That's
next
a good one.
so good. Our next question is from Sam Bridhe, who asks, how did you come up with the idea for colors for the characters? What are your thought processes when you decide what color your character would be?
I use an approach where I work with either thematically or like environmentally. So Persephone spends a lot of time in the underworld, which is obviously like those blue colors, and if she is pink, she's going to stick out a lot. So those, and vice versa, like probably like when Hades is in Persephone's environments, they're like quite light, so he is also going to stick out a lot. So in that way they're complementary, and also it kind of makes it a little easier to market. So quite often you'll see something now that's like pink and blue, and you're like, yeah, Lore Olympus, pink and blue, like that, and people can pick up on that very quickly. And then again, other characters are like thematic, like Ares is meant to be a little bit like rusty, like a sword would be rusty, so his eyes and stuff are red, so it's like rust, and that is like the approach that I went for that. And Zeus is purple because he's thunder, so thunder quite often has like, I don't know if scientifically thunder has purple in it, but if you look at like a thunderbolt and Google image search, there's always some purple involved, very scientific. So yes, this is why he's purple. Yeah.
And our next question is from an anonymous attendee who asks, when writing dialogue about trauma, do you get any sorry, I'm going to rephrase this. Do you get any outside opinions? I find a lot of the dialogue spot on. And for that question, I'd also be curious to hear your answer as well, Jennifer.
Personally, when I'm writing, that sort of dialogue, I try to go about it in a way where it's very like informed by my own emotions, for lack of a better description. So I'm just like, what would this feel like? Like, how would you feel? What can make this a little bit like more nuanced? And I do, like, if I've written something and I feel like it is particularly sensitive, like I will try and share it with a couple of people, and I'll be like, what do you think? Like, is this good, or is it kind of like blah? Like, was this handled well, or do you think it was insensitive the way that I wrote it? Obviously, like with the comic being at the point that it is, I do have like more help in terms of like sensitivity readings as well, like, but in the beginning I didn't so much, obviously, because I didn't have those resources, and it's probably not something that would have occurred to me either. But yeah, like I always try and do my best and be like, is this, am I being sensitive to people the way that I'm going about this, or is this just hurtful and not helpful?
With me, I think for things like dealing with you know, I look at things like dealing with assault or trauma, also in the same, not the same line, but the same kind of field is something like mental health issues. You know, I definitely, if I'm worried that I'm not capturing it correctly, I will reach out to a few trusted people to read. But also, I feel like, you know, we also have to be careful with that because there's no one right way to
Yeah.
deal with any type of trauma, any type of mental illness. And I also come from the field of psychology, so that's what I went to school for. And you know, I worked in that field for a little bit. So you know, I think that you definitely want to make sure, as Rachel said, that you do have someone double checking just to make sure that you're not missing something that somebody else may be more sensitive to, but also at the same time, no one is going to respond the same way. And you know, and I think that's what helps, you know, even though no one responds the same way, a lot of people will have similar responses, which makes it, you know, you may be able to reach more people by keeping it, as she said, how you would respond in that situation. So that's what I would do.
And our next question is from another anonymous attendee who asks, how difficult was it to go from a vertical format to the traditional page-by-page format for this release, Rachel?
That's a good question with a good answer. So I did not lay out the book. Like I just had to do like the extra comic that's in there and like, you know, the covers and things like that. But there was a graphic designer who did it, who was very talented. I took my bonnet to him because I like, so I come from a graphic design background. I used to do graphic design before I did this. And when people were like, are you interested in doing a book? I'd be like, if I am laying this out, if I am to be converting vertical to the page, I am not the woman for this task, because if I was doing it, we would not be sitting here today having this lovely conversation. It would probably like be in a barrel burning somewhere. I don't know. Like, oh, it would take me such a long time. It's like a massive puzzle. So I'm glad I didn't do it.
Yeah, I'm
so
just
it's easy for me because I did nothing.
Yeah, I'm looking at the things. I'm just imagining trying to move all of that into like the right format and order. Oh my gosh, that's a lot.
Well, unfortunately, we only have time for one last question. And so this question is for both of you, and it's from Sarah, who asks, if you weren't writing your books, what would you be doing? And why don't we go start off with Jennifer, and then we'll end with Rachel.
I may be working in psychology, or I would just get more alpacas and just raise a bunch of mean spitting brood alpacas.
That sounds
Goals.
fantastic.
If raising alpacas was an option for me, I too would be raising alpacas. I don't know, I'd probably still be working as a graphic designer or something like that. Yeah. Like, oh man, probably just still like my office job.
Practical answer. I mean, well, thank you both so much for such a fun, enjoyable hour. I'm sorry we have to end. I really appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much for having us.
And to our audience, if you haven't purchased a copy of Lore Olympus yet, I've dropped links in the chat, but there also will be emailed to you after the event. And thank you for joining us for this fantastic event, and I hope you all have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for coming.